Hey, boss lady.
Good evening, Professor. How are we?
We're back.
We're back.
Hey, you look nice today, as always. Be careful about that. Looks
Well,
like
it's a sunny day out
I was gonna
and it's
say.
warm and sundress time, so why not?
You got your hair up.
Yeah, it's getting a little hot
It's a
out
little
there,
hot up
so
there.
yeah.
Well, I got a
I'm not a
haircut.
very good stylish. Good thing I didn't have daughters. They would be like, or maybe that would have trained me to be better. I don't know.
I think you're doing just fine.
Flip up and go. And I
Just,
see you got a haircut.
I got scalp. Well, no, I just got a nice cut. And I would have even taken it shorter this time of year. It's getting hot now.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, you ready for this one tonight?
I'm ready. I hear we're talking about selfish people.
Oh, yes. I try to be that way every day.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Hey, in this world, if you're not selfish, you can't get anywhere, right?
Sometimes I wonder.
Sometimes you wonder.
Yeah.
Yes, we're going to talk about selfish people tonight. I could turn around and we could first start off and say, well, what are you going to talk about with the masters tonight? Masters in training. Uh, well, we're going to talk about someone that taking their parents to dinner and they think that the parents should always pay. That's your sibling, as an example,
Mm-hmm.
from what we're covering. Anyway, you, on the other hand, when you take the parents, you pay for it. And the parents really appreciate that. And they tell you that. And you're like, I really should say something to my sibling. But I'm not going to address that here tonight. That'll be later on with them. Another selfish example, an office example. How about that?
Oh.
You know, just kind of cruising down the aisle and you're looking over there at the copy machine while you're getting your cup of coffee. And sometimes I like to watch the interaction that's going on. I had one that occurred where one person's got a load of stuff they're trying to make copies of, and another one you're grinning. You must have heard about this. Another one comes up, and the first one is not a selfish person. They're selfless. How about that? They think about others. They say, well, "Do you? I'm really got a lot here to do. Do you have, not that much? Oh, I've only got one to do. Oh, well, here, hold on." And so they finish. First person does the little part of their batch. They pull out a lot of it. They got it up there in the slot, put a whole lot out. So to run through, so they get their copies, they put it aside. They tell them, well, go ahead and make your copy. So the person gets up there and they make the copy. They're kind of drinking my coffee, watching what's going on. Just one copy. Well, then the person decided they need to email it some way. So put it back to the machine, but now they have to tell the machine they want it to be emailed to someone. So they do that. And then they think, apparently, that they must need more copies. Because they turned around and told the person who was nice enough to let them cut in, I'm going to have to make a few more copies for my boss and come to think about it for my team. And so they run those copies through. I'm still watching. Then they turn around and say, and I really need to email this to the group as well. So they don't have a group email, they got separate emails.
Oh my goodness.
So they started putting them in, and I'm like, the other person is like, and I'm like, it's time for me to go. So you can decide what's selfish and what is selfless, and maybe both of them are acting selfless. I don't know. But I would say that the second one who came up and, you know, took the intervention, if we want to call it that, and got up there, probably wasn't thinking as much about the other person. Will you give me that much?
Mm-hmm.
They're more involved with themselves and what they need to accomplish. And they forgot the goodwill of the first person. Well, I'm bringing that to light because we're going to talk about a few stories tonight. I promise, folks, I'm not going to keep you over 15, okay? I'm going to do my best to hold it there. But they're little interesting stories about people who were selfish. And the problem was those that were selfless suffered. Now, a couple of these we've already talked about before, so I'm going to go kind of quickly over those. And then I'm going to hit the one that's kind of the kahuna, as I call it, that we're all like, hey, we've heard of that before, but that's a good one to bring back to memory. Okay, let's start with Cain killed Abel. All right, why? Well, all we know in the scripture is that Cain gave a sacrifice and Abel gave a sacrifice. Abel turned around and gave animals. And he gave those that were plump, the best of his flock, so to speak, sheep, cattle, whatever. And he sacrificed to the Lord. Cain was a person who worked by his hands in the sense that he had vegetables, grew crops. So he presented that to the Lord as well. Well, some people have thought in the scripture, well, that was because, Christ being the blood sacrifice, that God preferred the animals being slain versus Cain just giving vegetables. Others have said, well, but Cain probably may have given the best of his vegetables to God, the biggest tomatoes, the biggest cucumbers, maybe he did, maybe not. We don't know. The scripture doesn't tell us. But the scripture does tell us that God did favor Abel's. And it was probably because, if you ask me, because Cain's heart just wasn't in it. Maybe one of those who's just going to church to go to church, but his heart wasn't in it when the collection plate came by. And I'm not getting into that, but, he just really wasn't there completely. Mm-hmm. But the selfishness comes in is that Cain is disturbed that the Lord showed more favor to Abel. All right. Look, people, I have to tell you all the time. Now, I could sit here and think about how people are doing better than me, and I think, God's turned around and favored them. But, the Stoic Christian approach, as Christ has brought to our attention, be thankful with what you got. Enjoy what you have. You've been blessed. And so you have to look at it from the other hand. How many people don't have as much as you have? Haven't had the opportunity even to accomplish what you've had. Yeah, you've had sweat and blood and whatever, but I think we've all seen people that put a lot of sweat and blood out there and they never got rich. Just the way it works. Mm-hmm. Even though they tried to hold their money, they may have invested in something that went wrong. I've done that before. No. Anyway, the point to be made, we should be thankful for what we have. But Cain came to the point it upset him so that there was only one thing to do, and that's take out the person who was bothering him. And that doesn't mean the Lord, which ultimately was God. So he killed his brother. And of course, then when God came around, which knew, said, wherefore or where is your brother? And he said, I'm not my brother's keeper. We all know that famous line, am I my brother's keeper? Well, we know how that turned out in the end. Not well. So here's another one for you. Think about David, King David. We talked about this before. This lovely young lady, when he goes up to the top of his penthouse, his throne, he turns around and looks out and sees this young lady who's bathing. Probably he's at the higher tier and he sees her down here at her apartment complex, so to speak, and she's bathing out there. I want that. Okay? Hey, it's in men's hearts. Can't stop that, right? Well, the problem is that the person who she was married to, I did say married, he was also one of the main leaders of David's army. And so Uriah was his name. David turned around and decided what's he going to do to get his wife. And the reason for that is David had already called his wife over to come to him and he got her pregnant. And so he was first trying to get Uriah when he brought him back out of battle and tried to get him to sleep with his wife so that, quote, they could say it's, his kid, but he didn't do so. He said, the men are out there in the field. Why should I be able to sleep in the comfort of my home? So he would sleep on the palace floor in front of the door of his house, whatever. He wouldn't go in and sleep with his wife. So David had to concoct this thing where he tells the soldiers, well, go into battle, and when Uriah, let him go first, and when he does, y'all just pull back from him. And he's going to die. But of course, his commanders told me, yeah, it's done. It happened. He died in battle. Oh, well. So he lets Bathsheba, Uriah's wife, mourn for a while, and then he takes her over to the big castle, called the castle of the kingdom. And so he marries her then, makes her his wife. Of course, David was sorry about it. And, he repented of what he had done. But it was a selfish act. Now, by the way, folks, I am not blaming these people. I don't think death, I think that's a little too far on both sides. And maybe I'm going to feel better about myself. I hadn't pulled that one, but I've done selfish acts before. I mean, if you don't believe me, sometimes you might want to drive with me. I try to do better now than what I used to, but you cut people off and so on, it just because they're moving too slow. La la la. And we've got to stop those type of things because it does build into us where we get it more accommodated to do that. And you don't want to accommodate yourself to the point that's the type of person you are. Mm-hmm. Okay, the next one's King Ahab. Talked about him. He married Jezebel. We always hear that word. Well, Ahab, he wanted to buy the vineyard that Naboth had. One of his, if you want to call it a neighbor to the kingdom there, king's place. Well, Naboth, it was his inheritance. He did not want to, give it, sell it, whatever to the king. The king said, I'll either buy it from you or I'll swap it for some other land for you. I just want it because it's so close to me and I can put a garden there. And Naboth said no. So King Ahab, he turns around, he goes back to his place. We'll call it the castle or whatever, his kingly home. And he's laying on the bed, looking at the wall, upset, in a funk, uh, won't eat. And his wife comes in and says, what's wrong with you? He said, well, Naboth, just like a child, Naboth won't sell it or give it to me in exchange for something else. He says, who's the king of Israel? I'll get the land for you. So she turns around and she does a little concoction, so to speak. She turns around and she has a letter she puts together and she signs his name on it, puts his seal on it, and it goes out to the leaders. And they're supposed to have this big banquet, tell everybody to come, don't eat anything all day until you get to the banquet. Get Naboth and put him at the head of the table, make him like he's really the star. Then have two witnesses come in and lie and say that he's been blasphemous to the Lord and also the king of Israel, Ahab. And then y'all take him out and stone him. Well, that's what they did. So where did the land go then? To the king. Back to royalty. So he got his garden, and so he's all happy about it. Ahab didn't even think a second thought about what happened to this guy. Well, I can move forward and say that, well, he finally found out about it because when the prophets came through God and to tell him how life was going to be. But we're going to keep moving on. And that's to our last one. All right. Again, we're not perfect. And I'm going to say they're not perfect either. And now we're talking about the apostles. What? Yeah, we're talking about the apostles. A lot of us have probably let this one slip from our early years, and maybe we haven't covered it in a while. But, there were 12 of them. Well, we all hear about Judas. He's the one who turned around and gave Christ away. But did you hear about the brothers, James and John? What were they doing? Well, they turned around and went to Jesus, and they said, Master, give us anything, promise to give us anything that we ask. That's about what they're doing. Hey, folks, when anybody ever in the world that you're dealing with, I'm going to ask you a favor and you agree now to do whatever I ask. Do as Jesus said, and others have, even before his time. That is, and Solomon did it when his mother, Bathsheba, was asking him a favor to give the eldest wife of David over to his eldest brother. The bottom line is, what do you say? What are you asking? That's it. What are you wanting? Don't tell him I'll give you anything you ask. That happened to one king. In fact, that was the one who promised that to the little girl, his daughter, who was dancing in front of him, and she wanted the head of John the Baptist. Oops. And so they had to kill John the Baptist, which he didn't want to do, and put his head on a silver platter for him. Maybe it was gold, but he gave it on a platter to her. Anyway, so Jesus said, what are you wanting me to give you cotton plots for? What are you wanting here? And so the brother said, well, we want you to put us one on the right side and one on the left of you. I can't believe they didn't argue who's going to be on the right versus the left. Does the right one have greater power than the left? But we want to be on the right and left side of you. And, Christ is left. I can't give that. Only God gives that. He said, plus, you would have to go through what I'm going through, have to go through in the future to get there. Are you willing? Yeah, we're willing to do that. We don't care. We can do it. Sure you can. How many people ever told you in their life, we want your job and yeah, we can do everything it's going to take to get there and so on. And you're like, oh, man, I wouldn't even do it over again to get there. To be honest, you don't know what you're talking about. Yeah. Well, the thing of it was, how could they? Being apostles, didn't they know any better? Well, the other part of it is they were doing it behind the other apostles' backs. So when they found out about it, they weren't happy either. Selfish, 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 selfish. So now I'm going to tell you about a time I've been selfish. No, I'm not. Because if anything, I'm being a little selfish here by telling you their bad works, but not telling you my bad works. So we are at 14 after. So I'm done. Try not to be so selfish. And I would say try not to beat on yourself so much for what you've done in the past, because today starts a new day. So going forward tomorrow, don't jump in the copy line and keep standing there. Don't, in traffic, pull over in front of somebody, and when they're honking your horns, be a little more selfless.
But you gotta be careful how selfless you are.
Yes.
Also, right?
Don't give them whatever they want.
Yeah.
Just kind of, as my dad used to say, watch out the corner of your eye, son. Just,
Cause that's tough too, for
Yes,
the
it
other
is.
side,
It
like,
is.
oh, I feel bad because we have these conversations all the time.
That's what this place is about.
Like the copy person, just let them in and then you don't know it could just keep going on. So you gotta be careful. But yes, let's not be selfish.
Let's work on it.
Yeah.
And don't try to pick on other people like James and John and King Ahab and everybody else. We got our own problems to work out. They got
Yeah.
theirs.
Yeah. Like you
Look,
said, tomorrow's a new day.
it is. The day's not over yet either.
That's right. Well, thank you. That was great stories.
Thank you, boss.
Really appreciate it.
Go enjoy the weather a little bit if you get a chance.
All right. Thanks for coming on, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for having me. Bye.